Sometimes, a moment in the ring isn't just a moment. It's not a story. It's an erasure. It's the sound of a legacy being ripped apart, page by page, right in front of us. We thought we were there to witness a return, a comeback. We were wrong. We were there to witness an execution, and the impossible, agonizing birth of something new. The arena was electric. You could feel the static in the air, a hum that vibrates deep in your chest. After months of silence, months of rumor and speculation, the comeback was finally here. The Jumbotron flashed her name, Rhea, but that name was only half the story. The commentators spoke in hushed, respectful tones, not just about her championship pedigree, but about her other name, the one she rarely used, the one that hung over her like a shadow, or perhaps a shield, the name, Seagal. She was more than a wrestler. She was the daughter of a martial arts icon, a living extension of a Hollywood dynasty built on unbreakable bones and quiet intensity. She had been away, reportedly training not in a ring, but in the mountains, honing that other side of her lineage. The fans were ready. They were ready for the next evolution of a warrior. The music hit, the lights dropped, and the roar. It was deafening. It was a hero's welcome. She walked out, determination etched on her face. She wasn't just returning to her sport. She was returning to her throne, the heir apparent to a legacy of combat. She stepped through the ropes, raised her hand, and the sound of 20,000 people chanting her name was absolute. She was home. And then a different song played. A jarring, upbeat track that cut through the emotion like a knife. Confusion, Liv Morgan stepped out. The crowd's roar died to a confused murmur. Liv Morgan, her supposed best friend, her role partner, the one who had publicly defended her during her time away. Liv walked to the ring, a wide, almost manic smile on her face. The commentators tried to make sense of it. "A surprise welcome back," one of them offered, his voice lacking conviction. Liv circled Rhea, who stood confused, her guard lowered by the emotion of the moment. Liv opened her arms. The smile seemed genuine. The crowd, wanting to believe in the moment, began to cheer again. This was sportsmanship. This was friendship. Rhea embraced her, a tight, familiar hug. The camera zoomed in on their faces, a perfect image of reunion. And then, it happened. It wasn't a punch. It was a betrayal made physical. Liv's face contorted, the smile vanishing, replaced by a mask of pure, cold hatred. She shoved Rhea back. Before Rhea could even process the push, Liv lunged. It was brutal. It was fast. Rhea collapsed, clutching her face, shock replacing the joy. But Liv wasn't done. She slid out of the ring, her eyes wide and vacant, and pulled a steel chair from beneath the apron. The arena went silent. Not a boo, not a gasp, just air. The sound of 20,000 people forgetting to breathe. Liv entered the ring, raised the chair high ... and brought it down with sickening force. Not on her back, on her ankle. The one she just had surgically repaired. The one that kept her away. A single agonizing crack echoed. It wasn't just revenge. It was a message. What does true shock sound like? It isn't screaming. It's the sound of a universe stopping. It's the sound of thousands of people trying to reconcile what they just saw with what they know. Children were crying. Grown men stood with their hands on their heads, mouths agape. This wasn't part of the show. It couldn't be. The human mind rejected it. This wasn't a heel turn. This was an assault. The minimalist animations would show it best. Thousands of blank stick figure faces, all turned toward the ring, frozen. Commentators fumbled for words, their professional cadence shattered. Why ... Why would Liv do this ... Why now? One stammered. Referees spilled into the ring, but they were too late. Liv Morgan didn't flee. She didn't raise her hands in triumph. She simply stood over Rhea's crumpled form, the chair in her hand, breathing heavily. She looked ... satisfied. The broadcast cut to a harsh black commercial break, leaving the audience at home staring at their own reflections. Backstage, the reaction was identical. Monitors in the locker room were surrounded by other wrestlers, their faces pale. The producers in the truck were screaming, not in anger, but in chaos. The script was gone. This was uncharted territory. This wasn't a move for a championship. This was a statement aimed directly at the myth of Rhea, the myth of the Seagal bloodline, the myth that she was, in any way, untouchable. In one single horrifying motion, Liv Morgan had just proven the myth wrong. Within an hour, it was the #1 trend in the world. But it hadn't just trended in the wrestling bubble. It crossed over TMZ, Entertainment Tonight, Hollywood gossip blogs. The headlines weren't about a wrestling angle. They were personal. Steven Seagal's daughter viciously attacked in ring. Friend's brutal betrayal stunned sports world. The narrative was set. This wasn't an athlete. This was a victim. And a high-profile one at that. The pressure she had carried her entire life, the pressure to be tough, stoic, and dominant like her father's on-screen persona, was now inverted. She was the face of vulnerability. The internet, as it does, began to feast. Memes appeared. Screenshots of her face in agony next to images of her father emotionless from his action films. The juxtaposition was cruel and immediate. The world wasn't just discussing the attack. They were discussing her failure to stop it. The company's PR machine went into overdrive, but they couldn't control this. This firestorm was fueled by a name that, until this moment, had been synonymous with martial prowess. Now, it was associated with a cheap shot, a blindside. The Seagal legacy, carefully curated over decades, had just been tarnished. Not by a movie critic, but by a steel chair. And the attempt to erase her had just begun. All eyes turned from the daughter to the father. The world waited. What would Steven Seagal do? This was, after all, his daughter, his blood. The press, both sports and entertainment, descended on his known properties. Drones flew over his ranch. Paparazzi camped outside gates. They were waiting for the quote. They were waiting for the threat. They were waiting for the Aikido master to promise vengeance. And what they got was nothing. Absolute deafening silence. His silence became the new story. Why wasn't he defending her? Was he embarrassed that his daughter, trained in the lethal arts, was taken down so easily? Was he disappointed? Or, as some darker corners of the internet began to whisper, was he simply indifferent? This silence was a vacuum, and speculation rushed in to fill it. Every pundit had a theory. He's training her for revenge, said one. He's cut her off, said another. He sees it as weakness. This public void of fatherly protection did more damage to Rhea than the chair shot ever could. The attack was an event. The silence was a verdict. It suggested that perhaps she wasn't worthy of the name, that the legacy she carried was just a costume. The focus shifted from her recovery to her father's abandonment. The narrative was no longer about a return. It was about an orphan. Rhea was not in a hospital. She was at the arena's medical facility. And then she was just gone. She didn't go home. She couldn't. She was in a hotel room in a city she didn't know alone. The company told her to stay off social media, to not read the comments. But she did. She saw the memes. She saw the headlines about her father. Backstage, the atmosphere grew toxic. The other wrestlers didn't know how to act around the situation. It was too real. Rhea wasn't just one of the girls anymore. She was a liability, a mainstream headline. Some wrestlers, the ones who had clawed their way from independent gyms, felt a quiet resentment. They saw her as a legacy hire, someone who got a shortcut because of her famous last name. And now, that name was bringing a different kind of unwanted attention. She felt the shift. The text messages stopped. The usual "hope you're okay" messages were few and far between. It was replaced by a professional distance. She was isolated. The name Seagal had once been a shield. People were hesitant to cross her. But Liv hadn't just broken her ankle. She had broken the spell. She proved that the daughter of the action hero could bleed. And in doing so, she had demoted Rhea from Dynasty to just another wrestler. In fact, less than that. She was damaged goods. The next week, the show opened with Liv Morgan. No music, no smile. Just her, in the center of the ring, bathed in a single spotlight. The boos were so loud they distorted the microphones. They were visceral, hateful. Liv let them wash over her, soaking it in. She waited and waited until the noise finally quieted, exhausted. She raised the microphone. "You're all booing me," she said, her voice calm, almost gentle. "You're booing me because I broke your toy, because I ruined your fantasy." She paced the ring, making eye contact with the furious faces in the front row. "You didn't cheer for Rhea. You cheered for a name. You cheered for a lie. You cheered for the daughter of a man who pretends to be tough in movies." The crowd erupted again, but she spoke over them. "I cheered for her too. I believed in her. I thought she was different. I thought she was my friend. But I was there. I was there when she wasn't training. I was there when she was on the phone with Hollywood agents. I was there when she talked about this ring, as a stepping stone to her real career. The accusation hung in the air, a seed of doubt. Could it be true? She wasn't just a monster. She was, in her own mind, a whistleblower. She was the prophet tearing down a false idol. She never earned this. Liv finally screamed, her composure breaking. "She never earned you." While I was breaking my back in tiny gyms for $20 a night, she was in a mansion learning movie stunts from her father. You all talk about her bloodline. A bloodline of what? Pretending? Of fake fights and stuntmen? The boos were still there, but they were mixed with something else now. Confusion, a smattering of applause. Liv had turned a personal betrayal into a crusade, and the company leaned into it. Rhea's name was quietly removed from the active roster. Her merchandise was put on clearance. The commentators stopped mentioning her. Her social media accounts went dark. This was the true erasure. It wasn't just the attack. It was the systemic dismantling of her very presence. Liv had provided the motive, and the machine provided the means. Rhea wasn't just injured. She was gone. The storyline moved on. The title she was supposed to chase was won by someone else. The world, as it always does, began to forget. The attempt to erase her, it seemed, had actually worked. She was a footnote, a trivia question, the daughter who couldn't hack it. 6 months passed, an entire season. Liv Morgan was now the champion, her crusade having proven successful. She stood in the ring, holding the title high, declaring that the industry was finally pure. The show was about to go off the air. And then, static. The lights in the arena flickered and died. The Jumbotron flashed, not with a fancy video, but with a single typewritten word, RHEA. The crowd gasped. The new music was unrecognizable. No orchestra, no polish, just a raw, gritty, angry bass line. She walked out from the tunnel, but it wasn't her. Not the one they remembered. The long hair was gone, shaved on one side. She wore simple black cargo pants and a plain t-shirt. She looked thinner, but harder, and she walked with a limp. A permanent, noticeable limp. The ankle never healed right. She wasn't a returning hero. She was a ghost. She slowly made her way to the ring, her eyes never leaving the champion. Liv's confident smile faltered, replaced by the flicker of fear. Rhea stepped through the ropes, the crowd so silent it was almost holy. She didn't lunge. She didn't sprint. She just stood there, the living embodiment of a failed erasure. Liv held the championship up, as if to protect herself. "I did this for us," she stammered. I saved this place. I got rid of the lie." Rhea took the microphone from the referee. She looked at the championship belt, then at Liv. Then she looked directly into the main camera, at the millions watching at home. "You're right," she said. Her voice was raw, different. "You did. You tried to erase Steven Seagal's daughter." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. And you succeeded. Liv looked confused. The crowd murmured. She's gone, Rhea continued, her voice cold. You broke her. The silence from her family broke her. The whispers in the locker room broke her. The world that only saw her as a name broke her. You win. She is erased. Rhea let go of the microphone. It hit the mat with a heavy thud. But I, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that the mic still picked up, am not his daughter. She stepped forward, the limp becoming more pronounced. I am the woman you created. I am the woman who learned to walk again. I am the woman who has no bloodline, no legacy, no name but the one I own. She didn't make history by winning the title that night. She made history by rejecting it. The erasure wasn't her end. It was her beginning. The world had tried to delete her, but in doing so, they had accidentally set her free. The daughter was gone. But Rhea was eternal.